Hi, my name's Kim, and since I was young, I've struggled with same-sex attraction, and for years actually lived in the lifestyle. It wasn't until I actually encountered Jesus that I chose to trust that he was better than anything I felt or desired. It's been a journey and will continue to be, but it's a life of surrender that he calls all of us to. And I think as we enter into June, and as the world may be celebrating Pride, it's an opportunity for us to actually look humbly at what God has done for us. I know for me, with all the struggles that I face, it's a place that reminds me of Corinthians, where Paul talks about he would boast in his weakness, for there God could be manifest strong. So we don't look at our weaknesses or our brokenness and celebrate it, but we actually look at it, recognize it humbly before God, and invite him into it, that he can now be our strength. And so when we are in coffee shops or we're in our favorite restaurants and we're seeing the rainbow flag, it sometimes can be a reminder of pride to the world. But as you can see, I'm wearing a rainbow shirt with 7 colors, signifying God's promise, right back to Genesis. And so when we do see the rainbow as Christians, I pray that it's a reminder for us of God's covenant, of his promise, of his unfailing love for each one of us, not just for Christians, but an invitation to the entire world. It's not a sign of pride. It's actually a sign of God's goodness and his love and his mercy for all of us. I think this is a great time to be reminded of what the Catholic Church stands on. So I'm going to read right from the Catechism, number 2358. It says, the number of men and women who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies is not negligible. The Church is saying it's not to be ignored. Do not ignore people who are struggling, right? It says this inclination, which is objectively disordered, constitutes for most of them a trial. This is huge, you guys. It says this inclination, which is objectively disordered. It doesn't say this person is disordered. And I think we need to remind ourselves and others that we can separate a person from their desires or even their actions and see them as God sees them. See the person in front of us, and recognizing too that there's a trial. Whether they recognize it, whether you recognize it, there's most likely a trial within. There's a battle within. It says that they must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Now they goes back to the person. The person must always be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. It doesn't mean that everything the person does, but always the person being treated with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. It says that every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided. These persons are called to fulfill God's will in their lives, and if they're Christians, to unite to the sacrifice of the Lord's cross the difficulties they may encounter from their condition. Because we need to remember that mercy triumphs over judgment. There is a reality of sin, and we don't want to ignore that. We don't want to pretend that there is no sin. Sin is real and it separates, but we want to remember that yes, acting on homosexual desires is sin, but there's a lot of heterosexual sin as well. One doesn't erase the other, but sin is sin. Whatever type of sin it might be, it does bring separation. And so we want to remember the truth of who God is, his promise to us, his never-ending, unfailing love. And really, I think the question remains, will we surrender to that love? Will we trust in his goodness? Not only in June, but in our whole life, as new desires, as things come up in us, will we trust that God is greater and that his promise is that he is always with us, that he is for us and not against us, and that his mercy triumphs over judgment. And so I pray for myself and for all of us that we can walk in truth and in compassion, that God loves us, he is for us, and he is not against us, and that we can see his promise in this month of June as we see the rainbow around, that we will be reminded of his promise that he will never abandon us.